I do diddle-doo, 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 diddle-doo lights.
Mr. Puckett, we're back again.
Yes, we are back again. Apparently, YouTube does not have a policy against our video channel, so that's good. We're good.
Yeah, we haven't been banned yet.
We haven't been banned yet.
Yeah, so today's episode is kind of timely. In the news, got these, this little situation going on with, Linksys and TP-Link routers and, some security vulnerabilities has been, widely discussed on the interwebs. Yeah. So we'll talk a little bit about security specifically. I'm not a big fan of ransomware. I don't know if you are. Having somebody hijack your data and take it and demand monies.
No, just my wife. She just demands money all the time.
Are you calling your wife ransomware?
That's right. I didn't say that out loud. Okay.
So today we have with us Julian Soh, who one of our peers.
Welcome, Julian.
Yeah, welcome.
Oh, thank you guys. Appreciate it.
Yeah. So I understand you've been working with some of your customers. Sounds like on using some features we have in Azure to try to help avert that sort of disaster, the ransomware or other security problems occurring within a customer's enterprise. And glad to have you on today to kind of talk a little bit about that and what you did to help your customer overcome those challenges and hopefully detect those sort of situations in the future. So
great,
welcome.
thank you. Yeah, thank you for having us, guys. My name is Julian Soh, and I'm a cloud solutions architect with Microsoft. And you're right, it is kind of unfortunate. We did have a couple of opportunities to work with our customers when something like that happens. It's usually related to a security incident or incidences that kind of penetrated the environment. So we actually, fortunately, in most cases, the customers that I work with do have Azure or they're in the process of migrating to Azure. And that actually helps them, surprisingly, they're surprised to find out that it actually helps them in their security posture because there are inherently built-in tools in Azure that actually kind of help them implement some of these security best practices a lot easier than they would otherwise be able to do on an on-premises environment.
Yeah. So a quick question for you, Julian, is how many customers do you find that typically this is a reactive decision versus more of a proactive decision?
Oh, that's a very good question. Actually, a lot of our customers, this is mainly a reactive situation. I mean, they would think about it in a proactive fashion, but most of the time, they don't actually have the actual proactive measures in place to respond to it. I mean, they think about it, but unfortunately, most of the cases is really a reactive nature.
Yeah. Yeah, I think a lot of people, too, when it happens to them, they feel a little judged, right? I know coming from a background of a customer, and we had a few incidents, you're always kind of like, what did we do wrong? A lot of people say, well, we did nothing wrong, but oftentimes it's just, you didn't get through all the...
Yeah, or worse, to think that you're immune from it. This is happened to me. Our users are smarter than that. And,
it's a fad. It's a myth. It's a unicorn. It'll never happen to us.
Yeah.
And it's actually interesting because, it really is, no one is immune. I mean, I work primarily with public sector customers, so people would think that, there's not much, there's nothing too sexy about a local government per se. I mean, they might go after a big organization with a lot of money or something is really prominent like the NSA or something along those lines. But some of the customers that I have that got hit, I mean, they tend to think of themselves flying under the radar. They have nothing special to kind of raise attention or they don't feel themselves as really a worthy target per se. Right. So I think it really hit them by surprise when they actually do get attacked because, they just didn't think about it as being a target.
Yeah.
That actually might be even more of an opportunity for a potential malicious, actor to try to target an organization that might be easier from the outside to get in, such as one that has their shields down and thinks that they're immune from that sort of thing, and that actually makes yourself more of a prone target, I think, in some cases.
Oh yes, definitely. And we tested that theory a little bit too, and you will see it in a demo later on. One of the things I did was actually put a server out there, and it actually does have Windows Firewall turned on.
Mm-hmm.
And once again, it's just a no-name server in Azure, and I just basically turned on monitoring on top of it, which you'll see some of it in Security Center later on. Just a quick plug for it. And just within a matter of hours, I mean, we have over 10,000 hits of people trying to do a brute force attack on
Right.
it, logging
Wow.
with various login IDs, and that's basically real data that we're seeing. And once again, it's not even a small customer. This is literally a server with no purpose sitting out there, and even so, it got discovered.
Yeah,
So it's
right,
really,
yeah.
really an eye opener.
So the PubSec doesn't get a bad rap just because they're PubSec. I think that just to that point, then any server, any organization is always going to be prone to that attack. Just to the fact that you stuck a honeypot out there to see what was going to happen to it. So.
Right, exactly. And I actually try to tell our customers that and use that as an example. I say, hey guys, it's not really you as a target. I mean, look at this server right here. I mean, it was nothing, and even it became a target, right? So don't feel bad about it. We just got to make sure that we have the necessary tools and plans in place to prevent it from happening in future.
Yeah.
Right.
Cool.
Right. So why don't you tell us a little bit about how you've worked with your customer to use some of these features of Azure to help them?
Yeah, so most of the time when we work with our customers, it's really trying to get them to see the differentiators between why Azure, because that's really the main goal. So my day-to-day job is not necessarily security per se. It's really about being more efficient, using Azure as a data center. Mm-hmm. But along those lines, security becomes a very important topic because inherently with the customers migrating from on-premises to the cloud, to the public cloud in this case, there's a certain level of control that they got to give up. And the perceived thought process is that by giving up some of the on-premises control, you are also giving up possibly security practices and measures that are traditionally in place, and therefore you might be in a more compromised situation.
You mean like the big burly, brutal security guard that's chained to the server of the data center.
Exactly.
Right. But we keep coming back to this topic of trust, though. I mean, I don't know how many shows we've done so far, and it's still an underlying theme to a lot of our conversations here. It's trust, right? It's like today, if I do it myself, I know it's done, or at least I perceive that I've done it right, or I've done it right. And so to ask somebody else to do that for me, especially something very this sensitive, right? I think this is a highly charged topic when you say, no, we can do it for you and do it better. And it's almost like you just stepped on the landmine with the customer when you said, oh, we can do it better. But the truth is I think we actually have a good value and a story for this type of topic. So,
and we invest literally billions.
Oh yeah.
In protecting those customer assets. So.
Yep.
Yep. And the way I discuss it with my customers too is generally not so much that they relinquish the control to us. It's really that they invite us to kind of co-manage the environment for them. Right?
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah,
so,
that's actually a really good point.
Yeah, so we actually tell them that, hey, we can take care of some of the things for you, but we really depend on you guys to also tell us that some of the things that we are detecting are legitimate or not legitimate, right? So, so one of the things that we always talk about, especially in the security realm, and you see in all the slide decks that we have out there, and even in the demo, we talk about the co-management concept. So we manage certain things, but really we are providing tools. And to your point, we invest money to, like the Security Center is an example of one of our investments that provides tools to them to actually allow them to configure an environment and implement those on-premises environments and security best practices that they're familiar with. So that the cloud doesn't become this, black hole nebulous thing that we're going to take care of everything for you, don't ask any questions. It's really we want them to participate together with us so we can make our services better, more secure, and in turn they get to benefit from the security as well.
That's a good way to describe it. Yeah, it definitely is a joint venture, quite literally, where we're investing in our infrastructure and providing services customers can configure for whatever workloads they have running. So.
Right, exactly. And the same way, a very tangible example was like, one of the incidences that happened to our customer. They're like, well, there's all these brute force attacks, well, why didn't you tell us? We're like, well, why didn't you shut it down? We say, well, we can't shut down every single login attempt out there because they may be legitimate. But what we do is that we surface those logs up to you.
Right.
In this case, once again, through System Center, through Security Center, and it will be up to you guys through the alerts to determine whether those are legitimate attempts or not legitimate attempts. Right.
We certainly have some good ideas in many cases. Like if we have some malware databases and we see inbound requests from known bad actors, those are ones we definitely highlight to try to eliminate that signal to noise ratio to make it easier for customers to digest some of that and alert them more proactively. But
exactly. Yeah. And that's where we tell them that our value statement is that, those things that are obviously noise, which we know is definitely a security issue, we may not even run it by you. Like, somebody who's logging in Redmond from the Redmond geography, 1 minute later, they're trying to log in from Europe. I mean, that's a very good example of an impossibility, right? So when we see these kinds of patterns where there's obviously an attack pattern, we will take action immediately and then notify them. But anything else that's a little bit of a gray area, we want to make sure we notify folks, notify customers so they can actually take the appropriate action.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Okay. So let's kind of click down into what you've done for some of your customers to help in kind of detecting and remediating these sorts of things.
So one of the things that we always do is we actually talk to them about what they have in place that they are comfortable with today from a best practices standpoint on premises, right? And so one of the things that we do is, first of all, educate them that what they're doing today is sufficient or not sufficient, right? Or what the best practices are, and help them transition into Azure and show them that whatever they have in terms of best practices, like for example, having separate subnets, a DMZ zone, those are all things that they have control over in terms of creating. So we help them in porting over their best practices. We also introduce them to things that our security professionals have. So we actually do have security professionals like the Global Incident Response Team. So we educate them, and the Global Incident Response Team, what they do is that they actually provide and expose their security development lifecycle practice with tools like the Attack Surface Analyzer, for example. These are all tools that we provide for free to our customers that allow them to assess their current attack profile, attack surface, and help it help their surface, help their posture be better. And then we take those recommendations and help them implement it or model it as how they will look like inside of Azure.
Now, I got to ask, so when you say free, there might be some alarms and bells going off in people's heads that says, well, how good is free, right? You're so used to in an industry, in tools and intellectual property, right? This is why I'm in business as a software manufacturer, for something that I'm going to give away for free. But I think this is our story to the customers that says, we must build a secure cloud, and we want you to have a good experience. So how good is our free tools?
I would say that especially in the realm of security, our free tools cannot be anything less than working really good, right? And providing the sufficient information. I think, as a company, we are mature enough, having gone through, as all of us know, the cycles in years past of reputation. Putting security front and center. I mean, back to the SQL day, that's where it first started, and the famous Gates memo. I think that was really the turning point that actually kind of transcends all the years till today. So I would say that our free tool is really good and robust and will provide information, and has provided our customers information that they were not otherwise aware of, right? And the reason why, and to the skeptical customers who think, okay, why is it free, if it's that good? Well, the reason is because we are not technically in the tooling business from a security standpoint. We are in the cloud business, and we want to make sure that no weak link in the cloud will bring somebody else down. So whenever we have a customer, if they are in Azure and they have a compromise in Azure, it is it's human nature to think that Azure might be involved, even if it was a bad practice on the customer side of the house, right? I mean, because one
running in Azure,
there's got to be an association with Azure. So really, it is in our best interest. So I'm a field engineer. I'm really in my best interest and the company's best interest to make sure that we provide all the tools so that the customers have all that they need to make sure that their environment, even the ones that they are responsible for, that they have the ability to secure their side, so that their reputation and our reputation doesn't come into question whenever something happens.
Yeah, I remember there was a couple of incidents early on in somebody else's cloud where a customer had left a a password to like their whole cloud account, right? And they got owned and basically shuttered the company, closed them down. So,
right.
yeah.
And that actually was an example of not having good governance and policies in place, where you have, an employee that thinks, oh, this is set up securely, and in fact, it wasn't set up in a secure manner, and somebody stumbled across it. So.
Yeah,
Right.
but do you ever notice too, though, in those stories, how the cloud gets mentioned and their security kind of gets called into question? Is like, well, was it really, this cloud vendor's fault? And then, first thing is everybody's distancing themselves, like, not here, not me. I don't know what you're talking about. Look over there.
Right.
Yeah, it's like shiny thing. Go, go, go.
Yeah, I think there was an entire movie about that. Oh, the premise was around some bad things that leaked.
Yeah.
The cloud was kind of personified there too.
It's just awful. But yeah.
All right. So we talked about Security Center, Julian, and some of the capabilities that exist in that capability in Azure. How did your customers come to use those to help them?
So that's a good question. The Security Center is, as you'll see later, is a really nice and extensible solution. So we have what we call management solutions that really add on to Security Center. So customers get to pick whatever applies to their environment, and they will incorporate that management solution. So think of it like management packs from the old System Center days, right? So there's one for security and audit. There's one for compliance. There's even one for proactive. So we talked earlier about proactive maintenance. And my hope is always that we are talking to customers before something happens. So even in my presentation, I usually go in and say, hey, let's talk about Security Center, but let's talk about things that you put in place today from a preventive approach. Right? So one of the things that I try to talk to them about is implementing some of those management solutions which are preventive in nature that helps them be a little bit more proactive and therefore improve their security posture. So it would report things like, for example, patches that are really critical from a security standpoint that's not being applied to certain machines, or there are certain KBs that apply that needs to be configured according to what is a best practice from a performance standpoint. They should kind of consider putting that in place. So those are ways that I work with them to use Security Center, for example, in a more proactive / preventive measure standpoint.
So, how difficult are those to deploy? I'm thinking typically, there's things like these appliances you can deploy to stop distributed denial of service attacks. So really sophisticated solutions that exist out there in the market to be able to help insulate you, or creating air gaps and so forth around services that you have deployed. And in the case of Security Center, some of these management packs, is it something that like Matthew's wife could stand up, or does it require a PhD in security?
Actually,
she has 3, by the way, just so you know.
Well, if she's 3 PhD, she won't have a problem. But in all seriousness, in all seriousness, it's actually pretty straightforward. So to deploy a management pack or a management solution is actually pretty straightforward, because it comes in a list. You click on one of them, and it tells you exactly what it does before you even deploy. And then when you read what it does and you like it, you basically click deploy, and it actually goes into your portal in Azure, and it's very graphically driven. So as you will see in my demo later on, it's very graphically driven. It's red, orange, green, yellow, and you click on the areas, and it actually allows you to drill down. So it's a very visual type of dashboard. So there's really no command lines that you need to kind of take into consideration. But if you want to, you can always script it. But in all intents and purposes, it's really designed to be a very turnkey solution with not a huge learning curve.
Okay. It sounds like your speed, Ryan. Yeah. It looks like you can.
I could.
You got 3 colors.
I should preface, no disrespect to spouses out there or significant others, but I was referring to a non-IT professional.
You owe my wife now. Thanks.
And there are graphs everywhere, and there are pie charts everywhere. And then when you click on the chart, you just drill down. There are big numbers everywhere that says, hey, you have 12 VMs they are monitoring, and 4 of them are not really in compliance. You click on the number 4, it drills down to those specific VMs. And once again, if you like it to be in a tabular form, you can click on it and say, show it to me in a table form. I want to be able to see how the information is being gathered. So it is very, very visually intuitive. And I know that as a company, we have always been questioned in terms of our ability to present data sometimes because we have a lot of data. We present it on a big dashboard, a big screen. But in this particular case, you'll be pleasantly surprised to see that it is very intuitive, very straightforward, and you definitely don't need a PhD or anything special to be able to kind of assess and digest the information.
Okay.
So I got one more. So are you telling me we are becoming more of a security company or someone who understands security as good as those other guys? Because I always tend to think that, or at least the conversation is like, well, my security consultant, and it's some third party, and it's usually a really small niche company.
Those PhD guys, I'm telling you.
Oh, yeah, well, yeah, it's my cousins. All right, I'll admit, it's my cousins. So my cousins are out there saying, oh, yeah, listen to us. We're the trusted advisors because it's four of us and we were gray hats or whatever. They start throwing around these terminologies and things. But, I think people don't give Microsoft some credit, and I think that's because we haven't said it a lot. But this sounds like a lot of, we really, into the point of our investments, it's really becoming a stronger story for us and what we can do for our customers.
Exactly. And I would say that the reason why it is stronger for us as well is because we are securing our own cloud, and we are also securing the assets in our own cloud. So there are some inherent internal, right?
These very prominent products that any of them, because one security issue with any of them would be catastrophic. I mean, a security vulnerability to any customer is catastrophic, but certainly when you're hosting other customers' assets, that's something that we need to be very diligent about.
Exactly. And we have that cross-pollination, right? So like, for example, information from Xbox, right?
I was just going to say, you don't want to get my profile out there. That would be bad news for me.
Well, you got a bad rap score, I thought.
Yeah, but we have really good, like I said, information from all those other places are, things that if we see a vulnerability in any one of our other clouds, right, whether it is Xbox or O365, we use machine learning to be able to get that knowledge and get that kind of information to better secure Azure and vice versa. So our footprint allows us to do that. And being our product, it also allows us to do that. But just to close it out by saying that, we are actually not discounting some of those partners who are security professionals. So we would have management solutions that actually these professionals could actually provide into Security Center Extended. So, like for example, today, aside from Security Center, we also have partners in Cisco, for example, that provide a virtual security appliances and their firewalls in a virtual nature in Azure, Barracuda and those guys, and Palo Altos. So we understand that there are customers that have already, developed local knowledge on premises with some of these very specific products like Barracuda and the Cisco's, for example. So we partner with these guys to provide the virtual equivalent of their devices. And if their folks are already trained to do all that work and manage all that routing and the special routing needs that they have, we can just port that over, right? That's something that we actually allow as well. So we're not discounting them. We're actually embracing our partners as well.
So Ryan, I'm sure you've got this question, so I'm going to let you answer it or ask it. Yeah, he's not going to. Okay.
No.
So I've got a question for you. So this is one of the other key underlying tones, I think, with a lot of our conversations, and he's nodding his head. So when you distinguish between our services or our offerings to our partners, right? So I think, Julian, if you can kind of lead us down that path, because I think you set it up very nicely, is we don't discount them. They have a long history and value in combining forces with us and offering these products on top of our platforms. But what does a customer start to ask themselves to distinguish? It may not be an and or, it may or a binary yes and no, or one or the other. Maybe it's a combination of two products, right?
Right. So it is a combination of two products. Sometimes if they are comfortable and they have a long-term investment in it, we continue to leverage their skill set. If, let's say, they have special needs that we don't have initially, then definitely we kind of tell them to continue with their partner. But once again, we do stress that we are able to also feed into the customer's tool set as well. And once again, I would refer back to the amount of exposure we have in some of the more advanced technologies like machine learning. So I'll quote a couple of numbers right off the bat. Some of the things that we have that we can rely on for behavioral analytics against security threats, for example, we can rely on data from over 10 billion Bing web pages.
Did he just say billion?
Billion with a B, right? Because we
okay. One more time, because I don't think I got that right.
So I'm quoting this, and you guys will see it in the slide. Machine learning and behavioral analytics, we are relying on data from 10 billion with a B Bing web pages as an example for one of the sources. We are also relying on over 400 billion emails that go past 400 billion emails that go across our environment and our different clouds, right? We are also gathering information from over 1 billion Windows device updates that's going on right now. And because we have Azure AD, Azure Active Directory, we are relying on data from AAD, and that data equates to 450 billion with a B monthly authentication.
Monthly.
450 billion with a B monthly authentications from AAD.
I thought that might be a lifetime.
So these are examples of volumes that I don't think that a lot of partners can actually rely on from an analytics standpoint, right?
This is the advantage we get from things like the network watcher and some of those capabilities where we're showing inbound traffic from known bad actors. So where do we identify where those known bad actors are, or who they are? That's
recently this is the Intelligent Security Graph, right? And we open these APIs to not only our customers but also our partners. So to your question about where our partners and us can really benefit as a joint partnership is they can leverage these kind of information that we talked about and build it into their virtual devices to be able to access that kind of information.
You just hit on something I think that just light bulbed in my head, which was most of that intellectual property around security and these consultants that come in, they hoard it and they protect it as a secret, right?
Right.
And you just told me that we put it out there for everybody in that security graph so that they can see the intelligence we're gathering. It's like we just turned the light on in the worst roach motel in the world.
Right. Well, it's kind of the equivalent of Netflix, trying to, to bring social light to, movie suggestions. Obviously, this is a much more interesting approach, or interesting data set, rather, because it's real world. And not that Netflix isn't, but I guess...
No, but get your point.
Business data versus entertainment data. But it's the same thing. Let's open source it and let others benefit from it and integrate it in their products
because I can tell you, you would never find that from RSA. You're not going to find that from Cisco. They will only tell you about the known exploits, right? In a product or the CVEs or that come out and whatnot. But man, you're never going to get this like, here's what we collect off our devices. Go. Right. You're just never going to hear that. That's incredible.
And we announced it at the RSA conference. We actually told them, hey, Brad Smith was there. Mark Rasonovich was there, and we actually unveiled the Intelligent Security Graph at the RSA conference and said, hey, these are the numbers. Those were the numbers that we put out and told them that this is where our knowledge base is coming from. That's where we're getting all of our information. We're going to apply machine learning on it. Here's the API, go.
Dude, my mind is like, it's gone.
It's insane. So let's take a look at a demo of some of this in action.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, so let me go ahead and go do a demo, and we'll see you here in a short while. So this is the portal. And the first thing we're going to do is click on Overview. And we want to be able to first explore the capabilities that fulfill the prevention pillar. So what you see here is basically the summary / overview page for the Security Center And you can see that every one of these tiles are capabilities I turned on. I did just turn on network performance monitor, so it's still gathering information and we may not be able to cover that in time. But you get the idea, there's a network performance tile because I turned on the capability, and I'll show you where you can turn on those capabilities a little bit later on in the demo. And there's capacity performance monitoring, there's system update assessments, anti-malware assessment. I'm going to go ahead and click on security and audit for now. And you can see that in this particular capability, we are presented with a number of prevention specific capabilities that you would be able to implement. And this is to highlight potential vulnerabilities and allow you to address them before an actual incident happens. So you can see that one of the prevention capabilities could be the anti-malware assessment, which tells you whether a customer or a machine actually has anti-malware turned on or not. Update assessment, whether machines are missing critical updates, because obviously without an update the machine could potentially be vulnerable. So that is another prevention capability that's built into the Azure Security Center. And baseline assessment, which is where rules that would harden a machine are being run as tests against boxes that are out there, so that you can determine which boxes actually fail the hardening rules, and you get to pick and find out whether you want to harden the box more or it is at a right level. So it does have a bunch of out-of-the-box rules that we run against different boxes, and the information of what it finds will be presented to you in this particular category. So these three are examples of prevention before something happens, prevention of the prevention and closing gaps before something happens. So let's look at anti-malware assessment real quick. And you can see that the user interface is fairly intuitive. Let it spin up here in a short while. And there you go. It actually talks about, computers with detected threats as it pertains to malware. So good news is that we see there's none of them that's out there. So no threats detected, and no computers are affected. If I scroll to the right a little bit, I can look at the protection status. I can see that, there are a couple of machines. One is not reporting, and one signature is is out of date. So if I really wanted to, I can actually drill down and click on that, and it'll tell me which machine has out-of-date signatures or not reporting. And it's my Windows web front end there. I can click on protection status here, and it'll show me more detailed information. So by clicking on elements on the panes in Azure, and without having to install any special software, I'm doing all this through a browser, I should be able to drill down to the required information. So there you go. I can see that here are the servers. I can click on the servers on a different server and go look at the server's information, or I can click on Windows front end here and actually click on that server's protection status and drill down on it further. You can see that it tells me the server name, the type of protection it has. It tells me the signatures are out of date. Basically, signatures are older than 7 days. If I click on more, it'll also tell me the device name, and if there's a group, it'll actually tell me which group the computer belongs to. So these are all tags that could help you identify the machine if you have a really big environment. So there's a lot of pertinent information. Tells you about the signature version that's out there right now, and it also tells you when the protection status was last checked. So you can see the last time it was checked is at about 4 o'clock on the 8th, and before that it was 10 o'clock. Also on the same day, so it does check a few hours, and it's telling me that it's still not up to date. So it constantly is checking the status of these machines. So let's go ahead and click on the analytics again, and let's continue looking at other things that might be prevention related. And I mentioned earlier something that's not anti-malware, but maybe along the lines of patching. So if I click on update management, it tells me the servers that it is aware of that has the agent deployed, and it'll tell me the patch status and the type of patches a server may be missing. So once again, we'll let it go gather the information, and there it is. So it tells me, really pretty good news. I only have one server that need other updates, which is not of type security, which is good, and is not a critical update. So it is really a update which may not be that critical, but let's go find out what it is. And there are actually 3 of them. So one server, one computer require other updates. So let me drill down a little bit. Click on that. And so once again, it is my culprit, the web front end that I brought up to be the vulnerable machine. And so it kind of shows us, all the things that's wrong with this machine. You can see that, it's missing of the 2018-01 cumulative update for server 2016 for 64-base systems. And it is KB4057142. That's the knowledge base article. And the patch that is missing from this server. So we can click on show more and see what other information it provides. Once again, it says that the environment is in Azure. So I know this box is actually located in Azure. It's not my on-premises box. So that's information that is available to me. It also tells me my Linux box, and you can see actually this Linux box, if you look at the fully qualified domain name right here, this is actually an AWS box, and so it is actually reporting back that it is healthy, so it's up to date. So I don't actually have any critical security or other patches. This is a Red Hat box, so it's kind of nice. So there is a heartbeat and also an update status coming in from AWS. This workload is residing AWS, so that's an example of a hybrid cloud scenario where it is a different cloud and not necessarily a Microsoft cloud. Going over here, we can look at the breakdown of the different type of updates. We talked about it earlier, was 2018 cumulative patch, but you can see that it could be a rollup update or it could be a definition update. So let's click on updates right here. And once again, there's another way of actually drilling down to see the specific information of what updates may be missing that pertains to a particular box. So there you go. Once again, you see it's a 2018-01 cumulative update for server 2016. So that is an example of the status of the patch status of machines, which, if, like, say, for example, there is any machine that is missing a security update or a critical update, I mean, obviously those would be the ones we are most concerned about, and it will show us there's a gap, and so we need to carry out the preventive measure of making sure patches are being rolled out in a timely fashion before attacks take advantage of any exploits that might be vulnerable on that machine. So now going back, and let's look at maybe one more. Here's another prevention type of capability. Is really the security baseline assessment, and what that really is running rules, hardened rules as checks against boxes that are out there. So let's let this load up for a while, and like I say, once again, no special tools need to be installed. I'm doing all this through a browser. You can see that I'm only barely passing, 46%. Well, I wouldn't even say that's passing, right? I've got failed or incompatible computers, 4 of them. I only got 4 computers there, and they're all under 50%. And so, based on the hardening rules, I've got like 87 instances where it's critical, and the rest are warning and informational. But the critical ones, the red ones, are the ones that we really care about. So let me go ahead and on the chart there, I'm going to click on the red portion because that's the one I'm most interested in, and you can see that it is going to drill down and bring to my focus only the critical rules that I should be evaluating. So you can see that, oh, look at that. This is all the rules. So I'll look at the first one. This rule is it applies to, let's see, which one is this? It's an audit Kerberos rule, and so it says that there is an impact to server 08, and he wants me to read this knowledge base. Some of them actually has more detailed information in terms of countermeasures and potential vulnerability. So let me locate one of them. So, and you, as a CISO, you might go through and look at and read every one of these rules and see whether it is something that matters to your workload or not. So let's click on enable computer and user accounts to be trusted for delegation. So let's click on that. I don't know what that really is, but it should explain it to me. There it is. It tells you what it is, and there is the vulnerability. And it says that there is this is a default configuration, so you might want to actually change that configuration if that is a vulnerability that you're worried about. There are also examples of, let me find one that actually has a countermeasure. Access this computer from the network. You can see that there's a countermeasure right here. Users can connect the computer from a network and access resource on the target computer. So once again, you're going to read through the full description, the impact, and what the countermeasures and vulnerability would be. So, and it'll be up to you to remediate and make sure that this rule, when run again, passes on this machine if it is something that you're concerned about. So that's kind of looking at all the, on this pane right here is looking at all the 165 red critical rule violations. I can also drill it down to machine specific. So like, for example, I'm once again more concerned about the Windows web front end that has the most rule violation, obviously. So I'm going to click on that, 77 of them, and you can see it goes down to 77. And if I scroll down, you can see that these are the ones that are applicable to the Windows web front end. So once again, this really helps me basically harden my servers, reduce my attack profile, and hopefully make it more difficult and less likely for a machine to be compromised. So let's go back here. Let's take a look at a different category, switching gears real quick. What we've been talking about so far has been the prevention category of capabilities in Security Center. So let's look at when something happens. What if there's an attack going on or an ongoing attempt to attack your environment that's happening right now? What are some of the ways that a system can be attacked? One of them would be identity management or via the network through port scanning, but identity access is one of the most used attack out there, especially using brute force, for example, checking passwords and usernames. So especially if you have a box out there that is open and folks can try to guess a username or a password or use a brute force attack, identity and access management, identity and access is definitely one of the ways that that's tried and true that a lot of hackers use. So we do have that here, and I added it to from my management solution. Identity and access, I'm going to click on it, and right away it would come back and look at the logs from all these different machines and put it into this screen right here for me, so that I can know the health of my identity and access management situation. And lo and behold, by the way, I've got this environment up for maybe less than 24 hours, and I did put that Windows web front end box out there to be somewhat vulnerable. So it did fail those rules, but at the same time, you can see that in less than 24 hours, I mean, there's already a whole bunch of attacks happening on that box via identity and access brute force. So you can look over here, 72,000 attempts. 3 accounts have been disabled, but let's go ahead and say see all. I want to look and see what kinds of names that the brute force login attack is trying to use. You can see the administrator is number 1, 4,969 times, followed by staff and tests and student and scans. I mean, it's interesting. So I keep scrolling down. Oh, and by the way, all this information can be exported as well. Up here, you can see export. You can export it to Excel, so you can do further analysis if you want to. We have had projects where some of this information is exported, and we use Power BI to analyze the information. So there are many ways to actually analyze the raw data in tools that may be a lot more conducive for your reporting purposes. So, but for now, just for the sake of this presentation, I'm going through the UI and I'm just scrolling down and looking at all these names and accounts that these users, that these hackers are trying to use as a brute force method to try to log in. So that is pretty interesting and pretty scary to think that this is all within a less than 24-hour window. Let's go ahead and click on admin real quick. Let's see. That's one of the other ones that was very, very common. Where is this admin right there? Yeah, it was being used quite a number of times, and if I click on it, it shows me a lot of information as in when it was being used. You can see that it's being used within a period of, let's see, this is 426, 438, it's being used in every 12-minute interval, 414 to 426, so you can see that it is pretty consistent. Are they from the same group of folks? Let's click this and show more. You can see that this is from this IP address. Let me expand, like 61.84.149.250. Let me click on it just before that, like 12 minutes ago. Also 61.84.149.250. Let me click the third one. So I'm getting an idea that it is from the same machine, whether it's a person or it's a machine that's been compromised and been converted into an attack bot. This is the source that is actually attacking from using admin as the brute force login name. So you can keep going down and taking a look at it. You can see that it is basically the same box that is actually hitting us up. And in fact, if you use a tool like, for example, I was doing this earlier on, I went online and did some research, and this is actually one of the other ones, 5.101.40.67. This was in one of the logs as the source of the attack, and it's from Russia. And actually this one right here is from Korea, 61.84.149.250. So we can tell right off the bat that these foreign boxes are actually attacking our environment and using brute force from a login perspective. So let me go back here and take a look at this right now. So you can see that it really tells us that we need to do something about this box. There's a lot of brute force logging in. It's a good thing that the attempts are failing, but we might want to put a firewall in front of it. We might want to block certain IP addresses, source IP addresses, especially if we don't expect anybody from other countries trying to log into this box. So there are multiple ways to secure this box and definitely prevent the security and access method from being exploited. So let's go back and take a look if there's any more information from a security identity and access standpoint. Like, we don't have time to go through all the capabilities, but hopefully you're able to see from the navigating of the tool of the security center that you're able to actually get a lot of information, like logons over time and by machine, for example. So I can really just drill down and click on any one of those machines to be able to determine if there are issues that I might be concerned about. So I may not care about a web front end because that was the one that we were putting out there as a bait system perhaps, but I do care about this one here, which is my Arizona Azure domain controller that I put out there, and obviously there are about 70 plus logins. So I want to make sure that there's nothing fishy going on with my domain controller, because that's very sensitive. So I'm going to go ahead and click on list, and once again you can look at it via list or a table form or exporting into Excel spreadsheet or a CSV file. But let's look at the list. I'm going to scroll down and say, okay, well, it is a successful login audit. Once again, another successful login audit. That's good. Tells me that it's from my internal IP address, and that's kind of good because I know that for this domain controller, because it's internal, I actually don't have an external IP address associated to this machine, so nobody can really attack from the outside. But internally, I'm also seeing that it is a legitimate, successful login, so that is good to know It's login with administrator account. Well, maybe that's not so good because I really shouldn't have an account called administrator, so that's not a good practice. So it's kind of telling me that's something that that maybe we should really address. So you can see that this is kind of how I would use the information to be able to confirm that whether there is an issue or there is an issue, or at least some assurances that whatever is being audited is not showing any red flags happening on that machine itself. So that is, I'll just stop right there from an identity and access management standpoint. Let's take a look at some other things, like for example, let's see, what else do we have? Oh yeah, the let's go back over here. The non-security specific kind of capabilities. So there's one right here that I added, and I'll show you where I added these solutions from. I call them management solutions from. So here's one that is, the Security Center. The Security and Audit Center actually is able to provide. So although it's not security related, it does provide performance information. So I might be concerned because I have a service level agreement to my customers. So I want to make sure that there are no bottlenecks out there. So I did add a solution called Capacity Performance to my Security Center. And what it really does is actually catered towards analyzing data from Hyper-V host machines. So you can see over here, I actually have two host machines out there. Just to be transparent, one of them is actually a virtual machine. It just happens to be Data Center Edition, and that's my Azure backup server. And I use the minimum configuration to bring up the Azure backup VM. And when I brought it up under the Windows 2016 Data Center Edition, it sees it as a host, even though I have no VMs on there. But it's a good example here because I use the minimum amount of resources for the software, the operating system. You can see that it is pegged at an average of 100% for CPU utilization. I've got a real actual Hyper-V host, it's called VM3, and the average is 0.4 from a CPU utilization. So I know that I'm actually healthy here, but if let's say AZ Backup was actually a true host server, I can see that I'm really pegged and it's going to be a performance problem, and that might be what's affecting my SLA. Now on top of that, not to mention that I might actually want to increase the resources on this box anyways, because my backups have been running very efficiently lately, and it could have been the network that I'm sending those images up to Azure from a storage perspective, but I'm starting to think that it's really more the box, the AZ backup box that is on premises, that's backing up my on-premises servers. That's what's causing some of the bottlenecks, and the slow backup is really that the machine is being pegged at 100%. And if you look at the memory utilization, once again, it is still okay from a memory standpoint. So I know that if I re-provision this machine or upgrade this virtual machine, I don't have to give it more memory per se. I might want to give it more CPU, but maybe not more memory. Now, on the other hand, my VM3, which is my actual Hyper-V host, is running at 70% average from a memory utilization standpoint, which, by general industry rule of thumb standard recommendation is, if you're 2/3 of the way there, from a resource consumption perspective, you're kind of like at capacity. You really don't want to oversubscribe to it. So maybe I might need to make sure I don't put more VMs on this Hyper-V host, or I want to upgrade it, add more memory to it so that I can actually have a higher density of VMs on this box. But it's kind of giving me some valuable information in terms of what I may need to do to plan from a hardware perspective. So once again, it breaks it down by virtual processor, vCPU. So the Azure Backup actually has two CPUs. You can see that they're both running at 99.7 on average, so it's really being pegged. In my my mail server, my on-premises mail simulating server, I actually gave it a bunch of virtual processors. I think 4 of them, but if the 3 you can see over here, they're only running at less than 1%, well 3.4%, 0.2, 0.2. So I could actually reduce the number of processors. I really don't need that much processor. And in fact, even for my federation server, my ADFS server, just that one processor is good enough. It's not even being pegged at all, so that kind of makes me feel good that we did not add more processors than needed. So I can free that up because, as you know, I'm going to try to add more processors to AZ Backup. So if I can free up more vCPU here, I could actually put it to my AZ Backup server right there. So once again, memory utilization, total disk IOPS, everything's pretty flat. That's kind of good. That means there's not much data being written back and forth. Total disk output, there's a spike over here. That's not surprising. That's usually the time that we do backup. So you can see that it's probably a spike because AZ Backup is backing Earth and Sun, which is on my 2 other servers, and one of them is a bare metal backup. So a lot of it is being taken up right between the 12 o'clock to 3 o'clock time frame, which makes sense because that's when I had my backup job scheduled. So this is some of the performance related kind of data that the security center also provides as well. But let me go forward real quick to talk about how I was able to add the capacity performance, or where I added it from, and how, if I want to get more information, how do I enhance this tool, which kind of talks about the third pillar, where we want the tool to be evergreen, we want the tool to be customizable, and you want it to be modular. You add things and metrics and data that you need, and not put modules that you don't need for data that you don't care about or doesn't apply to you. So if I click on add, which is basically like adding a tile on my dashboard here, it actually brings up a pane with all the management solutions listed on here in Azure Government today. You can see that I can add any one of these and I can read the description. So for example, if I'm interested in DevOps and there's this new thing called containers. Well, it's not exactly new, but it's a fairly new trend per se in the IT vertical right now for DevOps. So I see there's one here called containers. It's definitely not one of the regularly available traditional management solution that might be readily available in any security solution that might be out there, but it is out there for Azure, so any new ones will appear here. But I'm going to click on containers, and you can read the description, what it does, what does this solution do, what it measures, what it provides you, and even links you to documentation and tells you the data that it's going to be collecting. And if you're interested, you click on create, and when you do that, it's going to provide another box right here, another tile right here that actually goes out and uses the same agent that's already been deployed to kind of gather information and data that's specific to a DevOps environment and what pertains to containers specifically. Right down here, as you can see, I actually have a VMware management solution. So if I do have a VMware environment versus the one up here that I included, which is capacity and performance, which is really related to Hyper-V, I could have come down and clicked on VMware and then click create, and it should deploy a solution and collect the data that is similar to what we saw in the Hyper-V management solution that talks about amount of memory being used by a host, the CPU, the number of hosts, and number of VMs that are on the host, for example. So that is an example of some of the things that are available as modular management solutions. Other things that might be interesting to you, which would be more along the prevention. So, we only talk about 3 of them, but it could be more than that. But there are things like, for example, change tracking. If you're interested in finding out all the changes that happen from machines, you can do change management tracking. You can also look at things like, for example, DNS analytics to see if anybody's attacking your DNS servers and service. And if you're interested in network performance, I actually added that. I was actually interested in it, but I'm not able to cover that because it's still in the process of gathering information. But you can see that it's actually gives you information, and it actually gives you once it's done, it'll give you information about network performance, whether you have actually breached the performance threshold of a network. So that's what's slowing things down. Maybe you do have network problems in terms of latency, or you may be able to pinpoint specific segments because of degradation in performance that might be adversely affecting the response time for line of business applications. So you can see there's a lot of information here that although may not be security related, it would still impact SLA. And in a way, it is kind of security because, it is like a self-imposed denial of service. Or maybe somebody is attacking your network and there is a denial of service going on at a network layer. So network performance obviously does contribute to information that probably helps you manage the overall health of your network across on-premises in Azure, Azure Government, Azure Commercial, as well as in other clouds as well. So that is how we keep the tools evergreen. That's how you add modular capabilities to Security Center. We don't have a lot of time to cover everything. As you can see, it's very, very comprehensive and continues to evolve and grow. But I do want to set the stage for a future presentation. You can see that within the tooling itself, we can also implement automation and alerts so that you don't actually have to remediate and browse through things manually like what we did today. And I did that on purpose so that you can see from the user interface how everything looks like. But you can really automate a lot of stuff, which is what you want to do. And you really want to have alerts so that your attention is drawn on key issues instead of waiting for you to come in and find all those red flags. So definitely leverage that. There's also the ability to increase or decrease your retention of logs. And last but not least, you can if I look at advanced settings, you can see that this is where I set up the lab environment. That we saw earlier on before the demo. You can see that I have a couple of connected sources. So under Windows Server, I actually had 4 servers, and this is where I downloaded the agent. This is the workspace and primary key that I used. Under the Linux box, I actually have one box that's actually being protected, and that's the one in AWS right now. But one thing that's important is that if I click on data, I can actually access syslog data and other logs as well that's located across my environment, whether it's IIS logs or Windows event logs. So I can actually bring all the information, mash it all together, and try to form an analysis with all that data, whether something is happening, what's happening on my network. Syslog is an interesting one because you can use this environment as a dumping ground for all of the syslog information, all the logging that's happening on your network gear that's out there as well. So that's all valuable information that when you put it into Security Center, that can all be leveraged even as part of machine learning to find the threat profile or use machine learning to figure out if something is happening or could happen in your environment.
Well, thank you for showing us that, Julian. I'm definitely going to go out and install some of those security agents on my machine to have them, report back the overall health and whether or not I'm missing any patches and VMs I've got running out in Azure.
It's too late, Ryan. I've already owned you. You are mine. Give me your Bitcoin.
and so hopefully, folks were able to see that, like we mentioned before the demo, was that, it's pretty straightforward. It's all very graphically driven. Mm-hmm. You click on the diagrams and the charts and stuff like that and drill down, and, it's just very intuitive.
Yeah, very impressive.
Yeah. So you helped your customer implement and deploy this. What was their reaction, or what was did their security team kind of buy in or embrace some of the stuff that you showed, or and more importantly, I'm assuming this is all now being used in a production capacity with your customer?
Yeah, yep, they are. Yep, they are post-event, and I'm also using it as a pre-event for a lot of the other customers because a lot of the security folks and a lot of the operations folks, they migrate to Azure, or their plan to migrate to Azure isn't a very linear process, right? So a lot of them did not realize that the Security Center can be implemented even to workloads that hasn't reached Azure yet, right? So they don't have to implement Security Center after everything is being migrated. They can do it during or even before everything is being migrated, increase their security posture first without having to rely on their rates of migration, so to speak. So I think that's a good message, a good aha moment for them is that security can run its own course, hopefully in a more critical path because it is a critical and important topic. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't have to be reliant on anything else from an operational perspective.
Yep. It's that hybrid story again.
Yes.
Yep.
Great.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much for sharing your story and outlining some of the things the customer should be concerned about from a security standpoint. And I think that's just a never-ending set of concerns that customers have. And I think we've done well to address the majority, definitely the lion's share, let's say, of some of those concerns, especially the more common ones that some of our customers have.
Definitely, I hope so too. So hopefully everybody will benefit from it.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot, Julian.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you guys. Appreciate you having me. Thank you very much.